This is the private sitting room for the Princess Royal Princess Anne. She has opened up the room and opened up her schedule to do something she rarely does, conduct an interview with us about things she doesn't often talk about. Losing both her parents within the span of 18 months, the upcoming coronation, the future of the monarchy, and Canada.
She just did the work. She has always just done the work. In 1976, she competed in the Montreal Olympics as an equestrian athlete, becoming the first British royal to compete at that level. Not attend. Compete. In 1974, a man tried to kidnap her on the Mall in London. Tried to pull her from her car. What didn't do? She reportedly looked at him and said, "Not bloody likely." That tells you everything you need to know about who this woman is. She raised her children, Zara and Peter, without giving them royal titles because she wanted them to have something approaching a normal life. She has been involved with over 300 charities. And through all of it, through 5 decades of work, she has never once made herself the story. That is the whole point of her. There is a corridor inside Buckingham Palace that most people will never see. No tourists. No cameras. No scheduled tours that win past its walls. It is a working corridor, the kind of hallway that exists purely for function, where staff move between rooms carrying the invisible machinery of the monarchy. On a particular evening that did not appear on any official calendar, that corridor went quiet. Staff had been asked to step away. No briefing had been prepared. No press secretary was waiting nearby with approved language. A door closed. And behind it, 2 of the most senior members of the British royal family sat down for a conversation that the palace had not announced and was not planning to. That detail should stop you for a moment. The British royal household is one of the most precisely scheduled institutions on earth. Every engagement, every meeting, every conversation that carries any official weight moves through layers of coordination before it ever happens. Assistants prepare. Advisors are consulted. Language gets approved. Timing gets logged. Nothing of consequence simply appears on a Tuesday evening without a paper trail behind it. And yet...
Firstly, I'd just like to make the point that we're very fortunate that His Majesty has allowed us to use Buckingham Palace for this event, and I need to say that, because in other aspects I probably wouldn't. But it does help, and we're very grateful for this opportunity. But I'm also very grateful for our speakers today.
Here was a meeting with no paper trail. Here was a summons that came not through official channels but through something quieter, something older than protocol. A brother calling his sister. A king reaching for the one person he has always trusted more than the machinery surrounding him. And what made people inside the palace pay attention was not just the fact of the meeting. It was everything that had been building toward it. Because Princess Anne does not do anything without reason. She never has. I want you to understand something before we go any further, because I think most people underestimate this woman in a way that is genuinely remarkable given everything she has done. She is 74 years old. She has been carrying out royal duties since she was a teenager. Not showing up to ribbon-cutting ceremonies and calling it a day. Working. Attending hospitals, military events, agricultural shows, charity functions, school visits, foreign diplomatic engagements, and then getting up and doing it again. In 2023, Princess Anne completed 457 royal engagements. 457. In a single year. That number is not a rounding error. That is more than King Charles himself. More than any other working member of the royal family. At 74 years old. Without a press team dedicated to celebrating how hard she works. Without a documentary series built around her effort. Without ever once sitting down for an interview where she positioned herself as someone deserving of recognition. The monarchy runs on visible figures who generate headlines and invisible figures who generate stability. Anne has always been the stability. The one the rest of them quietly rely on. The one Charles turns to when things get genuinely difficult, not because she tells him what he wants to hear, but because she tells him the truth. She is reportedly the sibling who gives him honest counsel even when it contradicts his instincts. And he values it deeply. The fact that he gave her the title of Gold Stick-in-Waiting at his coronation, a position dating back centuries, originally designed to physically protect the sovereign during important ceremonial events, was not procedural. That was Charles saying publicly, in the formal language of the monarchy, that this is the person I trust most. Hi viewers, I want to ask you something personal, something simple. If you had spent 50 years giving everything you had to something you believed in, showing up every single day without asking for recognition, would you stay? Or would there come a moment, quietly, privately, where you would finally ask whether it was still worth it? Tell me in the comments. So when...
Okay, we have to shift the way we support, and that's what we need to do.
And what does that shift look like for you?
Well, that's we don't know yet. I mean, there was an order to the years because my mother didn't change very much. We kind of knew what the rhythm of the year was, so things like that will change, and how we are part of the support for the monarchy may change slightly. Who knows?
Word started circulating inside palace circles that Anne had done something unexpected, that she had made a move that caught even seasoned royal observers off guard. People paid attention in a way they wouldn't have if it had come from almost anyone else. Because with most members of the royal family, unexpected behavior is almost routine at this point. Scandals, departures, public statements that contradict private reality. The British monarchy has spent the better part of a decade generating surprises that nobody wanted. But Anne is different. Anne has always been different. Anne is the one who was supposed to be steady. The fixed point. The proof that the institution still worked even when everything around it suggested otherwise. Which is exactly why what happened next landed so hard. She did not hold a press conference. She did not release a statement through official palace channels. There was no prepared language, no coordinated messaging, none of the polished machinery that normally surrounds any news coming out of the royal household. What there was instead was a series of quiet moments, private conversations, subtle institutional moves that, taken individually, might have meant nothing. But placed together, arranged in sequence, understood in context, they formed something unmistakable. Something inside the British royal family was being renegotiated. And Princess Anne was at the center of it. Not by accident. Not by drama. Not because she chose to make headlines. But because a woman who has spent 50 years as the most dependable force inside the most scrutinized institution in the world had reached a moment that every person, in every walk of life, eventually reaches. The moment where the question is no longer how much more can I give? The question becomes something harder. Something the palace has no protocol for. And that question was already answered. The evidence was already there for anyone paying close enough attention. The corridor had gone quiet. The door had closed. And what was decided inside that room was about to change the shape of the British monarchy in ways that no official announcement could have prepared anyone for. The man at the center of all of this is someone most people have never paid any real attention to. And that, it turns out, was entirely by design. Sir Timothy Lawrence was born in 1955. He built his career inside the Royal Navy, rising eventually to the rank of Vice Admiral. He studied at Durham University. He earned a reputation among everyone who worked alongside him as methodical, composed, and almost pathologically discreet. Those are not accidental qualities. Those are the qualities of a man who understood from very early on that his role in life was not to be seen. It was to be steady. And in the world he eventually married into, steady is worth more than almost anything else.
We are so close to this moment. Here we are again with history, with the coronation. Forgive me if this is a naive question, but how on earth do you prepare for that?
Good question. We've been very lucky. My mother was the Queen for a very long time. And although you kind of know that this might happen, you don't really think about it very much. Not least of all because the monarchy is about continuity. But I think for my brother, this is something he's been waiting for.
In the 1980s, Timothy Lawrence was appointed as an equerry to Queen Elizabeth II. That position put him inside the daily operational reality of the royal household in a way that very few people outside the family itself ever experience. He saw how it worked. He understood the rhythms, the protocols, the invisible structure that holds everything together when the cameras are not running. And it was in that role, moving quietly through the machinery of the palace, that he first encountered Princess Anne. At the time, her marriage to Captain Mark Phillips was in its final collapse. The press was circling. The narrative was already being written. And Timothy Lawrence was simply there. Present. Reliable. Completely unbothered by the noise. And had spent her entire life surrounded by people who made things louder. He made things quieter. They married in December of 1992. The ceremony was held at Crathie Kirk, a small church near Balmoral in Scotland. No royal pageantry. No enormous guest list. No state occasion production. Just two people in a sincere, private moment that felt nothing like the spectacle the public had come to associate with royal weddings. He received no title from that marriage. No official designation. No princely role. He simply became her husband. 30 years of that. 30 years of showing up to events he did not need to attend, standing slightly behind her, never giving interviews, never positioning himself as someone deserving of recognition. 30 years of being the most invisible man in the most visible family in the world. And then King Charles quietly changed everything. The elevation of Sir Timothy Lawrence from Knight Commander to Knight Grand Cross of the Royal Victorian Order did not generate front-page headlines. It was not announced with a ceremony designed to draw attention. It arrived the way the most significant things in the royal world often arrive, quietly, procedurally, wrapped in language that requires you to already understand the system to grasp what it actually means. Here is what it means. The Royal Victorian Order is not like other honors. It does not move through political channels. It is not recommended by committees. It is not tied to public service reviews or government nominations. It is the personal gift of the monarch. Entirely. The sovereign awards it directly, as a private expression of gratitude, to people they personally value. That is the entire mechanism. The monarch decides. The monarch gives. No one else signs off. The other individuals who currently hold the Knight Grand Cross rank within that order include Queen Camilla, Catherine the Princess of Wales, and the Duchess of Edinburgh. These are the most senior women in the British royal family. And Timothy Lawrence now sits in the same symbolic company. Let that land. A man who has spent 3 decades being deliberately invisible, who holds no official royal role, who was never given a title when he married into the family, has just been placed in the same symbolic tier as the Queen of England. By the King. Personally. This is not routine. This does not happen by accident. And the timing, coming in the same period as the unscheduled private meeting, coming as the royal family is navigating more internal tension than it has faced in years, makes it read as something far more deliberate than a standard honor. Charles was communicating something. The question was what? Because here is the thing about how the British monarchy actually works when it wants to say something it cannot say publicly. It does not hold press conferences. It does not issue personal statements. It does not sit down for emotional interviews where the inner workings of family relationships get laid out for public consumption. What it does instead is move quietly through the formal language of honors and titles and ceremonial appointments, placing meaning inside gestures that most people will never decode. The institution has been doing this for centuries. It is the only language it fully trusts. So when Charles personally elevated the deliberately invisible husband of his most trusted and most burdened sibling to the highest rank of his most personal honor system, he was not filling out paperwork. He was sending a message to Anne. He was saying, without a single public word, that he saw what she had given. That he understood what it had cost. That he had not forgotten who had been holding things together while everything else was falling apart. And if you needed any more evidence that something significant was happening inside the royal family at this precise moment, you only had to look at who was left. The working royal family right now is running lean in a way that has not been seen in modern memory. King Charles is managing a serious health situation while simultaneously trying to hold together an institution that has absorbed hit after hit over the past several years. He is doing this with a significantly reduced team. Catherine, Princess of Wales, stepped back from public duties during her own health recovery, a period that shook public confidence in ways the palace was not fully prepared for. Prince Harry is no longer a working royal. He left. He moved across the world and made very clear that he was not coming back in any official capacity. Prince Andrew lost his official roles in the aftermath of his association with Jeffrey Epstein, a reputational collapse so total that his return to any form of public royal function is essentially unthinkable. What remains is a very small group of people actually carrying the operational weight of a 1,000-year-old institution.
And for their contribution in terms of broadening what we hope was a general interest to you, but also your response to that, which is equally important. And those sort of observations are critical to me. I mean, I'm grateful because you've come together as a group. Interestingly, if you like, I'm not here because this was my choice. You very kindly asked me to become patron of your organisation.
Group, and is doing the heaviest lifting by a distance that should make everyone uncomfortable. 457 engagements in 2023. More than the king. More than anyone. At 74 years old. And she does not talk about it. She does not release figures designed to position herself favorably. She does not have a team quietly briefing reporters about how indispensable she is. The numbers simply exist, and the people who know how to read them understand exactly what they mean. Which is why the Edinburgh Castle departure stopped people cold. And had been connected to Edinburgh Castle for years. It was not simply a location she passed through occasionally. It was woven into her working life, her operational routine, the rhythm that structures everything for a woman whose identity is built entirely on showing up consistently to the same places, the same roles, the same responsibilities, year after year after year. Edinburgh was part of that architecture. And then she left it. Not in the way institutions plan transitions, not with the formal handover processes and coordinated messaging and scheduled press moments that typically accompany any significant change in royal arrangements. She left in a way that felt sudden to the people who experienced it directly. The staff there apparently took it hard. People who had worked alongside and for years described saying goodbye in ways that did not feel like the conclusion of a professional chapter. There were tears. There were quiet conversations in corridors that nobody had prepared for because nobody had really believed this moment was coming. These were not people who were casual observers of Anne's work. These were people who had organized their professional lives around her presence, her schedule, her particular way of doing things. The way she moved through a room. The way she expected events to run. The standard she held without needing to announce that she was holding it. And now that was simply gone. What is striking about this is not the emotion of it, though the emotion of it is real. What is striking is the practical dimension. Anne's presence in any space she inhabited created a specific kind of order. Events did not drift. Schedules held. Things got handled without drama or unnecessary delay. When that level of consistency disappears from an institution that runs on consistency, the gap is not abstract. It is felt immediately, in small ways that accumulate into something significant. The people around Charles have described him as someone who is now navigating a new configuration, moving forward without the daily proximity of that particular support structure. And for an institution that has never handled adjustment particularly well, that is not a minor thing. Something had shifted. Something permanent and quiet and significant. The only question left was what had pushed it to this point. And the answer to that question involved a tension that had been simmering inside the royal family for years, a tension that most people on the outside had sensed without being able to fully name. A tension between two women with fundamentally different ideas about what it means to wear a royal title. And a conversation that, by all accounts, did not stay polite. And has never been publicly hostile toward Queen Camilla. She is too disciplined for that. she understands that public hostility from inside the family does institutional damage that takes years to repair, and she has spent too many years being part of the repair process to throw that away on something as visible and unproductive as an open conflict with her brother's wife. Whatever Anne thinks, she keeps it contained. She follows the protocol. She shows up when required. She says what needs to be said. But protocol and warmth are not the same thing. And the people who have observed the dynamic between Anne and Camilla consistently over time describe a relationship defined by careful formality rather than genuine closeness. The kind of relationship where everything that needs to happen, happens, and nothing more. To understand why, you have to go back and watch the breakdown of Charles and Diana's marriage from the inside. She was not a peripheral observer. She was family. She saw the private reality of what happened before it became the most watched marital collapse in the history of modern media. And whatever her personal feelings about Diana, whatever the actual texture of their relationship, and respected what Diana represented in terms of royal duty. The charity work. The presence. The willingness to engage with people who were suffering in ways that previous royals had kept at arm's length. That mattered to Anne. That was the kind of work she understood and valued. And then she watched how that marriage ended. And what came after. When Camilla began stepping more visibly into the royal picture, and eventually became queen consort, and did what Anne always does. She accepted it. She worked within it. She gave it the public support it required. But there is a version of acceptance that involves genuine integration and a version that involves simply not creating a visible problem. What Anne offered Camilla was the second version. Then came the conversation that people inside palace circles have been describing with a certain careful restraint, because nobody who was present is particularly eager to see themselves quoted. But enough has filtered out to construct the shape of what happened, and raise the question of what a queen consort actually owes the public in terms of visible, consistent service. She did not frame it as a personal grievance. That is not how Anne operates. She framed it as a matter of principle. The argument, as it has been relayed, went something like this. The title exists within a system. The system only functions when the people carrying those titles understand that they are obligations, not privileges. The moment a royal title becomes something you wear rather than something you earn every day, something essential has been lost. And the public, which funds the institution and extends it its legitimacy, notices. Maybe not immediately, but eventually. Camilla has, to her genuine credit, tried. Her entry into royal life was not uncomplicated. She came in carrying a public perception that had been shaped by one of the most emotionally loaded narratives in modern British history. Since becoming queen consort, she has expanded her charity work. She has engaged more consistently with public duties. She has made a real effort to shift the way people see her, and to some degree it has worked. The hostility that once met her at every public appearance has softened considerably. But in Anne's view, effort and legacy are two completely different things. Anne has been constructing her legacy every single day for over 50 years. Camilla is still in the early phase of that process, and Anne, who has never been known for patience with people who treat royal life as something they can ease into on their own timeline, has standards for what that process should look like. What makes this tension genuinely fascinating is that it is not really about two women failing to get along. That framing is too simple and too small for what is actually happening. This is about two entirely different philosophies of what royal life should mean, colliding inside the same institution. Anne's entire identity is built on the idea that royalty is service. That the title means nothing if the work behind it is not relentless and genuine and unglamorous and consistent. That the moment you start experiencing the position as something that comes to you rather than something you pursue, you have already failed at the most fundamental level. This is not a position Anne arrived at intellectually. It is who she is. It has been who she is since she was a teenager standing at the edge of a life that could have been all privilege and no weight, and choosing the weight. Camilla's path into this world was shaped by entirely different forces. Her journey was personal before it was institutional. It was built around a relationship, around love, around a decades-long arc that eventually arrived at a public title. That is a different starting point. It produces different instincts. And those different instincts, when they meet and standard, create a friction that no amount of good intentions on either side can fully dissolve. Charles sits in the middle of all of it. He loves his sister. He trusts her judgment in ways he does not trust many people inside or outside the family. He also loves his wife and has stood by her through a level of public criticism that would have broken most people. Both of these things are true simultaneously. And navigating the space between them is not simple, particularly for a man who is also navigating a serious health situation while trying to establish a reign that has already faced more turbulence than anyone anticipated. The honor given to Timothy Lawrence begins to look different when you hold it against all of this. Because what Charles could not say to and directly, what the protocols of their positions and the complexity of their family situation would not allow him to say in plain language, he said the only way the monarchy knows how to say things. Through a gesture wrapped in formal ceremony, visible only to those who already understand the language. He elevated her husband to the highest personal honor he could give. He placed Timothy in the same symbolic company as Camilla herself. He said, without words, that he understood what and had given and was still giving. That her household mattered. That her loyalty had been seen even when no one was acknowledging it publicly. That is the monarchy communicating in the only dialect it trusts. But here is where the story arrives at something that no symbolic gesture can fully address. Anne is 74 years old. She has been operating at a pace that would exhaust someone 30 years younger. The question that people inside the palace and outside it are now beginning to ask, quietly and carefully, is not whether Anne is still capable of what she has always done. She has made clear, through everything she has continued to show up for, that capability is not the issue. The question is different. The question is whether the institution she has given everything to has given her enough reason to keep giving at the same rate. And whether anyone with the power to answer that question has actually tried. The BBC documentary that aired in late 2023, a film covering Charles and Camilla's coronation year, gave the public a rare window into something that royal coverage almost never captures. It showed moments of genuine humanity, Charles and Camilla laughing with staff, being visibly at ease in ways that the polished surface of royal appearances usually obscures. And Anne appeared in it briefly. Just briefly. She spoke about her mother's funeral. She described the moment the crown was removed from Queen Elizabeth's coffin. And she used a word that stopped people who know her well cold. She said it brought her relief. Relief! From Princess Anne. A woman who has spent 50 years publicly carrying the weight of an institution without once using her platform to describe what that weight actually felt like. A woman who does not give interviews about her inner experience. A woman whose public face is discipline and forward motion and absolute refusal to make things about herself. That woman sat in front of a camera and said that watching her mother's crown be removed brought her relief. And if you understand Anne at all, you understand that this is not a small thing. That word cost her something to say. That word is a window into a woman who has been carrying more than anyone on the outside has fully understood, for longer than anyone has publicly acknowledged, and who for one brief, unguarded moment let the real weight of it show. That is the announcement the palace never made. Not a press release. Not a coordinated statement. Not a carefully managed revelation through approved channels. It was a single word from a woman who never uses words carelessly. And it told you everything about where she is. About what 50 years of relentless, unglamorous, unacknowledged service actually costs a human being. The corridor that went quiet. The meeting that had no calendar entry. The Edinburgh departure that made grown professionals cry in hallways. The elevation of a man who spent 30 years making himself invisible. The confrontation with Camilla that was not a personal attack but was something harder, a question of whether everyone around her was willing to hold themselves to the standard she had never once lowered in 5 decades. And then a single word, spoken quietly in front of a camera, that unlocked something the palace had no mechanism for managing. Relief! This is what Anne's announcement actually is. Not a resignation. Not a withdrawal. Not a dramatic exit designed to generate headlines and position herself sympathetically in the court of public opinion. She would never do any of those things. They are not who she is. What it is instead is a renegotiation. Quiet, direct, conducted entirely on her own terms, with no interest in how it reads in the press. The shape of her service is changing. Not ending. Changing. And the institution she has given everything to is being asked, for perhaps the first time, to meet her somewhere near the middle. Britain is watching this without fully realizing it is watching it. Most people see the 457 engagements and the public appearances and the steady presence and conclude that nothing has changed, that Anne is simply Anne, that the monarchy still has its most reliable figure exactly where she has always been. But the people inside the palace, the ones who understand how it actually operates, who can read the language of private meetings and sudden departures and personal honors and unguarded documentary moments, those people know that something has already shifted. Something that cannot be shifted back. The monarchy has survived for as long as it has because of people exactly like Princess Anne. People who do not need the recognition to stay committed. People who find their entire purpose in the work itself rather than in what the work produces for them. People who absorb the weight of an institution so completely that everyone around them forgets they are carrying it at all, until the day they adjust their grip. And right now, with the working royal family operating at minimum capacity, with Charles managing his health and his reign simultaneously, with the questions about Camilla's role and legacy still unresolved, with Harry gone and Andrew gone and Catherine still returning to full operational capacity, the one person the institution cannot afford to lose any ground with is the person who just let a single word slip that told you exactly where she is. The crown endures. That is the story it has always told about itself. But the crown endures on the backs of people like Anne. And what happens when those people quietly, privately, without drama or announcement, decide to renegotiate the terms of what they are carrying and how long they are willing to carry it at that particular weight? That is the question no palace briefing has ever been written to answer. And it is the question that is sitting at the center of the British monarchy right now, unresolved, unacknowledged in any official capacity, and impossible to ignore for anyone paying close enough attention. She is still showing up. She will keep showing up. That much is certain. But something has changed in how she is showing up. And something has changed in what she is asking for in return. And the palace is learning, slowly and without a protocol to guide it, what it actually costs to keep the most reliable person in the building. Now here is what most people still do not know. The private meeting between Charles and Anne, the one that cleared the corridors and generated no official record, did not end where most people assume it ended. What was decided in that room has set something in motion that will become impossible to ignore in the coming months. There is a development connected to Anne's future inside the royal family that has not been publicly confirmed yet, something that involves a specific role, a specific title, and a decision that Charles has apparently already made but has not announced. And when it comes out, it will reframe everything covered here. Every quiet gesture. Every symbolic honor. Every Edinburgh farewell. It will make the full picture visible for the first time. That is the story coming next. And if this one mattered to you, you cannot afford to miss what follows.